Welcome back, everybody, to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at how a parent's job can affect their child's brain development. And we're focusing specifically on developing nations. So in a lot of these countries, self-employment is more common than having like a traditional job. So we want to know, does that impact a child's cognitive skills? Does it matter if mom or dad has a steady paycheck or if they're running their own business? And for this deep dive, we're looking at a research paper from the Children and Youth Services Review. It focuses on kids 8 to 12 years old in Ethiopia, India, and Vietnam.
Yeah, it's a really, really important question. And this study's findings are pretty interesting, I think. But before we jump into the results, let's make sure we all understand the difference between wage jobs and self-employment in these countries. So self-employment, it offers some flexibility, but you also have things like lower income, unstable earnings, and much tougher working conditions compared to a wage job. Think about the difference between, say, a government teacher with a reliable salary and benefits and a street vendor whose income can change every day.
Yeah, that's a great point. So given that contrast, what did the study find? Did a parent's job type actually influence their kids' cognitive abilities?
Well, the study was looking at cognitive skills broadly, talking about things like language, memory, problem solving, all the building blocks for learning and thinking. And get this, the researchers found a strong connection between fathers who had wage jobs and how well their 8-year-old kids did on these cognitive tests. This was especially true in Ethiopia and Vietnam.
Wow, that's a big deal. Dad's job really does seem to matter. What about the 12-year-olds in the study?
That's where things get interesting. For the older kids, the father's job type didn't really have the same impact on their scores.
Why would there be such a difference between the younger and older kids?
Early childhood is kind of like building a house. Those first few years are for laying the foundation. It's when experiences in a kid's environment have the biggest impact. Interventions, whether it's childcare or even just a father's stable job, can have a really long-lasting effect during those years.
So it's not just about dad having a job. It's about the stability a wage job can provide. Okay, so why does dad's wage job seem to help boost brain power in the younger kids?
Well, it seems that fathers with wage jobs are more likely to spend money on things for their kids, like clothes, extra classes, or even just being able to afford some little treats. And those things can actually help with a child's brain development.
Makes sense. More financial security means more to spend on the kids. So we're seeing like a ripple effect here. What about moms? Did they look at the impact of mothers with wage jobs too?
Yeah, they did, but the data wasn't so clear on that part.
What do you mean?
They couldn't find a clear connection between a mother's wage job and her kids' scores. And it could be because in these cultures, far fewer mothers had wage jobs compared to fathers. So there just wasn't enough data to see if there was a statistically significant effect.
So we need more research.
Exactly.
Well, this study does give us some pretty compelling evidence about the role of a father's employment. Seems like a father's stable wage job, particularly in those early years, can significantly benefit their kids' brain development. And maybe it's those financial investments leading to more opportunities. But we do still need more research to see what's going on with moms and how their work impacts things.
Yeah, this study really highlights how important those early years are and the role that having a stable job can play. It makes you wonder about what policymakers can do with this information.
That's a great point. What kind of things could policymakers actually do based on this?
Well, for one, it makes a really strong case for investing in those early childhood development programs. And those programs can take a lot of different forms, like making sure more people have access to good quality childcare or providing some financial help to families with young kids.
Yeah, creating that safety net that lets parents provide what their children need. Makes sense. What other policies could we look at?
Well, another avenue is job training programs. Helping parents move from self-employment, which we know can be tough, to a more stable job with a regular paycheck. It's about giving those parents the tools they need to get a reliable income.
Sounds like a multi-pronged approach. Supporting parents and making sure kids have a good environment to grow up in. But wouldn't that be really expensive?
Well, yeah, there are costs involved, but early childhood interventions usually end up saving money in the long run. It's like making sure the foundation of a house is strong. It's easier to get it right the first time around than to fix it later.
Yeah, better to invest early than wait until later to try and catch up.
Right. And it's not just about cognitive development. If a kid starts out strong, they're more likely to do well in school, be healthier, and even contribute more to the economy later in life.
So it benefits everyone in the end. But we should probably talk about some of the limitations of this study, right?
Of course. Every study has limitations. This one used a specific model, and as we talked about before, the data on mothers wasn't as strong as we would like it to be. But even so, the findings are still important and worth looking into further.
So this study's a good start, but it really brings up more questions. What about replicating this research in other developing countries? And what about looking at this in developed countries?
Oh, definitely. It would be really interesting to see if the same patterns show up in different places. Like, what if we could figure out what specific aspects of jobs affect child development the most? That could be useful for labor policies and even things like family leave programs.
It's not just about what governments can do. We all have a role to play. Employers, educators, even individual families. We need to think about how work affects kids.
Absolutely. And that brings us to a really important point. The study looked mostly at the financial benefits of having a wage job, like having more money and stability. But what about the social and emotional parts of a parent's job? Could those affect things too?
That's a good point. So you're saying that how a parent feels about their job could impact how their child develops.
Exactly. Think about it. Someone who likes their job and feels like they're a part of a team is probably going to be less stressed and more engaged with their kids. They might be more patient, more present, more able to support their kids emotionally.
So it's about having a job that lets you actually be a good parent.
Mm.
Not just bringing home the money, but the quality of the work matters too.
Exactly. But sometimes those social and emotional benefits might conflict with the financial ones.
How so?
Well, imagine someone who has a job that pays really well, but they're always stressed out and exhausted.
Right, so they might be there physically, but not emotionally. And we know that can have a negative impact on a child even if the family has enough money.
Yeah, it's a tricky balance. We can't just encourage parents to get any wage job. We need to make sure that their work environment supports them both financially and emotionally.
That's a really good point. To really understand the impact of a parent's work, we have to look at the whole picture, their finances, their emotional well-being, their relationships.
Exactly.
So we need more research that looks more closely at the social and emotional side of all this. What about things like how happy people are with their jobs, work-life balance, support systems at work? How do those things affect child development?
All really important questions that need to be explored further.
This has been a really fascinating deep dive.
Yeah.
But we've definitely uncovered more questions than answers. And that's what I love about these deep dives. They make you think and see things in a different way and open the door to new discoveries.
I agree.
Welcome back to the deep dive. As we've been talking about this research on parents' jobs and kids' development, it's amazing how much is connected. It's not just about bringing home a paycheck. It's about the kind of work you do, how parents feel, and how all that affects kids.
Absolutely. And, as we wrap up this deep dive, I think there's one thing we haven't really talked about yet. The study looked at the money side of things, having a steady income and all that, but it didn't really go into the social and emotional parts of work.
Right. We talked about how parents' emotions matter, but how does the social part of a job fit in?
Well, think about the connections you make at work, the people you can talk to, that support system. If a parent feels good about their job and like they're part of a team, that can really affect how they feel overall, and that can definitely impact how they are as a parent.
So it's kind of like a chain reaction.
Exactly. A good work environment can make for a happier parent, which makes for a better home life for the kids. But the opposite is true too. If a parent feels isolated or stressed at work, that can affect their mental and emotional state. And that's going to affect how they interact with their kids.
So it's not enough to just look at the job title. We have to think about the whole experience.
I completely agree. And I think that's where future research should go. We need more studies that look at these things. How does feeling good about your job, having work-life balance, having good support at work, how do those things affect children?
We need those answers. This deep dive has been so interesting. We've definitely learned some things, but we have even more questions now. And that's the great thing about these conversations. It gets you thinking and opens up whole new areas to explore.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for joining us today, everyone. The world of work is always changing, and we all need to be thinking about how to make it better for both parents and children. Policymakers, employers, educators, families, we all have a part to play. Keep asking those questions, and until next time, happy diving.